At the end of Volume 5, we saw the fall of Cinder. And now we're left with the question of who is going to be the next Fall Maiden. Now, to first answer that question, we need to first answer the question of whether Cinder is actually dead or not. Now, we saw her flash frozen and drop from a cliff. If this was any other world, you'd be dead, you'd hit the ground, shatter. I've worked with flash freezing myself. When something's flash frozen and dropped from a height, even just the regular height of a person, it shatters. So from the height that she was dropped from, she would definitely be done. Granted, this is the world of RWBY, and she has maiden powers herself, so she could have gotten out of it. In fact, we saw Raven do the exact same thing earlier in the episode just previous to that. But they made an explicit point of showing that when Raven and Cinder were fighting, their aura was deactivated. So I'm guessing that wasn't possible for Cinder at that time. Plus, we also saw before she was frozen that her maiden powers on her eye got deactivated as well. So in my opinion, Cinder is actually dead. As much as I love her character and don't want her character to be cut from the show, granted her character has been quite corrupted by anger, so I think it's probably time for her to leave. I do believe that Cinder is in fact dead. Now, with that being the case, who could Cinder possibly be thinking of before she died? Because if it was a young woman, that is who the powers would be transferred to, as Crow explained back in Volume 3. When the previous maiden dies, or passes away, the powers get transferred to the next young woman that she's thinking of. And he also made an explicit point of mentioning that if she's thinking of a man, the powers get transferred to someone random. So, let's see who Cinder would likely be thinking of as she died. Now, there are only 3 prominent women that I can see Cinder actually thinking of. The first, of course, being RWBY, because she's had a fixation on RWBY for the past entire series, pretty much, ever since they started having more encounters after Volume 1 and 2, especially in Volume 3, after the Silver Eyes incident. She lost her eye and her arm because of RWBY, and has really wanted to get back at her since then. So, it would make sense that upon falling and dying, she'd think of her one regret, and that's not being able to get back at that little scythe-wielding brat who's pretty much ruined her. But that being the case, I don't think RWBY's going to get the power, because she already has the power of the Silver Eyes, which I'm guessing is some sort of magic in and of itself. And with that being the case, I don't think that they're going to stack the Silver Eyes and the Maiden powers onto itself. Granted, I would love to see that the 4 main characters that we have in Team RWBY become each in of themselves the different maidens. That would be an interesting plot point, and granted, I could see Yang becoming the Spring Maiden if Raven was ever to die, because odds are that Raven would be thinking of Yang as she passed away, but that's a different topic entirely. I don't see RWBY being the Fall Maiden, because Cinder, well, because of her Silver Eyes and the power that she already has, it wouldn't really make sense. It would be more interesting to have it transferred to another character. Now, the next person that I think Cinder would most likely be thinking of is Salem herself. But I have a feeling that if Salem was able to inherit the maiden powers herself, she would have done it already. Not to mention that since Salem has, for lack of a better term, the corruption all over her body, most likely from Grimm, and she's been alive for centuries, etc., etc., Grimm don't have aura, and we have explicitly known, as previously stated, that the maiden powers attach to a person's aura. I don't know if Salem necessarily has aura, or if her control over Grimm, her corruption by the Grimm, has removed said aura, or what exactly the case is. There's a lot we don't know about Salem, and my guess is that she's just incapable of getting the maiden powers herself, otherwise she would have taken them herself. They obviously have the technology for Cinder to steal power from others, so why wouldn't Salem just do that herself if she could get the powers? Plus, I also don't think that it could be Raven, because I know Cinder tried to steal Raven's power and, make herself, I guess, both the Fall and Spring Maiden, but I don't see them doing that either, because, of course, the last person on Cinder's mind would probably be Raven. I'd say that's the most likely in that exact moment, because, she's staring at Raven, the one who froze her and ended up killing her. I could see that being likely as well, but I don't think they're going to stack the Maiden powers on the same person unless they make a point of that throughout or later on in the series. So I don't think Raven's going to get the powers either. The last person that I could actually see likely getting the powers is Emerald, because Emerald has been the one who's been alongside Cinder the most out of everyone, pretty much. At the first 3 volumes, it was Cinder, Mercury, and Emerald who were traveling around doing their nefarious deeds all together as a group. And we didn't actually see Salem until the end of Volume 3. So it was pretty much just those 3 operating under Salem, who was this unknown entity at the time. They were just operating on their own under her direction. So, and as we saw at the end of Volume 5 as well, when Emerald found out that Cinder was gone, she freaked out. She was crying and absolutely distraught. In fact, Hazel had to physically carry her away because she either was passed out or wasn't in a state to where she was able to carry herself. So I could see with that kind of deep connection, granted I don't know if Cinder had the same connection to her that Emerald had to Cinder, I could see Emerald actually getting the powers. And that, based on the person, she's not, in my opinion, the most likely person that Cinder was thinking of, yet out of the people mentioned, I think she's the most likely to get the power based on the power that she already has. Because Salem already has the power of all the Grimm, RWBY has the Silver Eyes, Raven has the Spring Maiden's power, so I could see Emerald getting the Fall Maiden power. But, that being said, although Emerald's the most likely character of the ones that we already know, it's entirely possible that the Fall Maiden powers are going to be transferred to someone who we have no idea who it is. Because, as we saw back in Volume 3, Crow made an explicit point of mentioning that if she's not thinking of a young female, it's going to be transferred to someone random. And it could also be entirely possible that Cinder's thinking of someone else, because Cinder obviously has a past before she joined Salem, so it makes sense that there might be someone in her past that she's thinking of. Maybe Cinder has some regrets from when she was a kid, maybe she has a little sister, maybe this, that, or the other, that Cinder knows someone else who's prominent in her life that drove her on this path to, I guess, gain power and overthrow the world underneath Salem, that, she knows someone else who the powers would be transferred to. So my theory is that the Maiden powers are going to be transferred to someone else. And another point I want to mention, we don't exactly know how the Maiden powers, or how quickly the Maiden powers will get transferred. We did see back in Volume 3 that the transfer from Amber to Pyrrha was going to be fairly quickly, but as we saw, that was abnormal means, where they were going to transfer one aura from the aura of Amber and fuse it with Pyrrha's aura. And then when Cinder took the power from Amber, that was pretty instantaneous as well. And when we saw Cinder finally kill Amber, the powers transferred to Cinder almost immediately. But granted, Cinder already had half of the power, so it would make sense that the power would want to connect very quickly and become whole. So under natural circumstances, I'm not exactly sure how fast this power would be transferred, because Cinder would die. Would the power immediately go to Emerald, RWBY, Raven, Cinder, Salem, or someone else? Would it be an immediate process? Would it be it would go into the ether and then have to take maybe a minute or two to find the next person? How fast would this power travel? It is magic, but as we saw with Amber and Cinder, the power it didn't take on a physical form, but it took on at least in the view of the audience, maybe not in the view of the series, but it took on a visible form and flowed out of Amber into Cinder. So we didn't actually see the aura leave Cinder because, you know, we didn't see her actually hit the floor. So granted, she could be alive, as I said before, but I really don't think she is. So we don't know the ins and outs of this entire process. We're probably going to find out later on in the series when we meet the next Fall Maiden, or maybe we already have met the next Fall Maiden. We don't exactly know. So my guess is it's going to be someone different. We may not even see them in Volume 7 or 8, but we're going to meet the next Fall Maiden later in the series, because there's still the Vaulted Beacon that needs to be unlocked. And I doubt they're going to do that off-screen and then Salem's side just show up with the relic. We're going to meet the next Fall Maiden eventually, and there's going to be a plot point with that. My guess is it's someone that we have not met yet, so I'm looking forward to seeing who that is and what that person's connection would be to Cinder, because that's probably where it's going to go. I don't think it's going to go to just some random person, because that would potentially take too long to get into the series. Because it would be someone who likely has no idea what to do with the power, what this power even is. They would just end up with this power and probably not even know how to control it, etc., etc. So there'd be a lot of problems with that. It's probably someone in Cinder's past who's connected to her. And I'm looking forward to seeing, even though Cinder is dead, in my opinion, even though she's gone, it'll be nice to find out more about her past and more about what led her to become what she is now, and why she desires power so much that she's willing to fuse herself with Grimm and, you know, pretty much put the world into chaos. I'm interested to see what happens. Let me know what you think below. Let me know your theories. Let me know if you agree with mine or think differently. If you think Cinder's still alive, etc. But if you like this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.